Good afternoon, and on behalf of ET Edge, Microsoft, and EY, I welcome you all for this roundtable discussion on the topic of enhanced sales productivity with data-driven insights. For this discussion, I have been joined by very senior leaders from the industry, and I'll quickly introduce each one of them. Please join me to welcome Amit Gajwani, EVP Global Sales at Sybase Software, Navneel Kar, President and Head India Sales at Tata Consumer Products, George Johnny, Vice President, Sales and Marketing, Travel, Transportation, Logistics at Sutherland Global Services, Viplav Shah, Head Sales and Marketing, Ashok Leland, Srividya VS, Global Head, Sales Effectiveness and Enablement at Infosys, Ashish Masand, Director Sales at UST, Alpana Datta, Partner Workforce Advisory, EY India, and finally, Geeta Gurnani, Country Head Modern Work at Microsoft India. Welcome to you all, and thank you for taking out time, and look forward to an interesting session. I think we are good to begin. Last year, the pandemic drove majority of the employees out of offices to work from home. It has changed the business landscape overnight, focusing businesses to lead in new ways and rethink how they connect with their employees and customers. It will be apt to say that the future of work arrived early. The rapid evolution of the workstation from cubicle to open floor and now to remote work, I think that has changed everything about how workforces communicate, collaborate, and stay connected. For sales leaders like the ones present in this session, taking care of their people and customers has been a top priority. At the same time, they have also shifted their strategies that has enabled them to sell in the face of new customer habits and tough economic times. And I'm sure this would hold true for most of you present here. While facing these disruptions, it has also provided unexpected opportunities to drive a better sales process with prospects and customers. With thoughtful modifications, right digital tools, and planning, we have seen the emergence of new sales experience and customer interactions. But through this discussion, we will try to find how the sales organizations, through use of effective digital tools and technologies, have created innovative ways to tap into and understand their customers' needs, and how are they looking to turbocharge their respective revenue growth. So that's the key focus that we will have during this conversation. Having said this, and with this background, businesses have spent much of the last 18 months trying to adapt to extraordinary circumstances. The pandemic has flipped almost every aspect of normal life, on its head. That's the fact, and everyone is facing that. Let's begin with one of you, and please feel free to have share your views. What have been some of the most fundamental challenges that the sales organization has experienced over the last year and a half? Anyone, please, or do you want me to select? Ashish, let's start with you.
Fine. Thank you very much. So, good afternoon, everybody, and thanks, Ashwini, for a very wonderful setting up the stage, basically. So, one of the basic challenges which I think all of us we came across was there was a complete shock to everybody that we now had to not meet our customers, and the opportunity to do more of FaceTime was kind of suddenly gone, basically. So, getting the whole team aligned to the new thinking and the new style of engaging with the customers, and then the use of online tools like Teams and Zoom and the WebEx stuff. All these were very limited in use in the past, because that was more used when you are looking at international conversations and so on and so forth. But when you're looking at trying to meet your customers in person, and you would be very happily jump on a plane and then go and meet the customers, there was a complete cultural shift, basically. So that was, I think, one of the biggest cultural and shocking changes, basically, which came in. The second was, how do you now find out the type of requirements the customers would have? Because when you have more FaceTime with the customers, the customers are able to talk about their pain points much more easily, much more openly. Now, when you have virtual environment, and it's many times usually not one person but one to many, basically, you find that the customers usually may not open up that much. So being able to really extract all the information and really capture all the pain points of different stakeholders, basically, that was, so the whole buyer journey suddenly changed, basically. So getting to that, and the third thing was about people care itself. So
Right.
a lot of people were getting impacted within the organizations, and then being able to cope up with many of the leftover transactions, because suddenly the team member would get impacted, either herself or himself, or within their families, immediate family members. So you have to give them as a very high priority. So I think these are three fundamental things which we saw, and I think very practically everybody would have also seen as well,
Seen
basically.
the same. Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's have a couple of more views before we move on with our discussion. Anybody, please. Navneel?
Yeah, hi, and thanks, Ashwini. And first of all, thanks to Economic Times and ET Edge for organizing this session, and a big hi to all my fellow panelists. As Ashwini was saying, the last 2 years have been a very, very challenging time for all of us. And just to give you a quick introduction, I work with Tara Consumer. For those of you who are wondering what we do, we make brands like Tara Tea and Tara Salt, which I'm sure all of you are users of. And for us, when the entire world went into lockdown, our entire world turned upside down, because for us it is about reaching physically to consumer households and to retailers. We have a network of about 24 to 25 lakh outlets across India, where we directly service our products. And for us, it was a huge challenge when the entire supply chain got disrupted and everything broke down. So we went through extremely challenging times, and the additional challenge for us, if this was not enough, was that Tata Consumer also went through a merger where actually two companies, Tata Global Beverages and the foods business of Tata Chemicals, they merged together and integrated to form a new organization. So actually, our company is just about a year old. We came into existence last year, just before the pandemic. So for us, it was double whammy, to be able to handle the business, do the integration, make sure that teams come together, make sure that distributors are integrated, and also deliver on the integration objectives. And I think the biggest fundamental change for us was that the rules of the game changed. And the FMCG business operates traditionally with certain rules of the game. You have a set of retailers, you service them on a weekly basis, fortnightly basis. You have consumer demand, which is largely steady. You may have a few new launches here and there, but otherwise, largely demand is stable, right? So all of you would be consuming maybe 4 to 5 packets of Tata Salt in a month. You will continue to, use those packets of Tata Salt. So demand is largely steady. But then that whole world changed because we started seeing a disruption at every level, and we saw it at the level of consumers. Consumers started changing and buying different brands because the brands were simply not available. Over a period of time during the pandemic, you had a situation where certain brands overnight disappeared from the shelf and consumers shifted to other brands. The other big feature we saw was that consumers, a lot of places, disposable incomes got impacted. People lost their jobs, people had reduced salaries, pay cuts. Consumers started down trading. So they left their favorite brands and started buying brands which were cheaper. They reduced the consumption of certain brands. And when people were cooped up at home, the consumption of certain categories went up and the other categories, simply tanked. So all kinds of things happened at the consumer end and at the customer end. Even at the retailer end, what we found was that certain areas under lockdown, the retailers went out of business. And in other areas which were open, suddenly business doubled, tripled overnight. So how do you handle that kind of change in the demand pattern in an FMCG setup where everything is based on a predictive demand modeling and a steady demand modeling? So I think that was one big change that we faced. The other area that really got disrupted for all of us was on the people front, because what we realized is that work from home is a very different cup of tea, and people always feel, oh, it's so convenient to work from home, but then the boundaries of work disappear, boundaries of between work and office and home disappear, and it becomes very, very difficult to be able to jump from one call to the other and really do justice, right? So we started noticing that people suffered from a lot of fatigue when they work from home, and actually the work life started suffering. And I remember my wife telling me that it's better you go to office once it opens up, because there's no point. You are sitting at home and ultimately you are staring at Microsoft Teams right from 8 o'clock till about 8 o'clock in the night. So that became a huge challenge. And finally, I think no one can deny the impact that COVID had on the lives of individuals, including a lot of our team
Absolutely.
members. In my own family, we had people who suffered from COVID, who fell ill, and the emotional turmoil of having to deal with the crisis and at the same time deliver on the business. I think these were some of the fundamental challenges that I saw in the last 2 years.
Very well put, so very aptly said as well. So, in fact, I'll just summarize Ashish and what Navleen also, captured. One is the cultural shift that most of the organizations faced, and I guess that holds true across all of you here. The move to virtual, playground, interacting with customers virtually, and the people element. So that's the core, and that will, I'm sure that will stay. Uh, Navneet touched upon the disruption that has happened. Rules of the games have been changed. So customer trends and the predictive models that we had no longer hold true in the new environment. So that's another fact that we all have to face. Let's move on and try to understand how are you looking to spot new opportunities and quickly capitalize on these emerging trends that you see, through your interactions with your team. How are you using technologies like analytics or AI automation to combine various sources of data, and with your own insights, to identify, prioritize revenue opportunities that are there and make faster, better decisions?
Ashwini, if I may.
Yes, John, please.
So the first thing I want to react is I was very, very affected by what Navneel said. 5 to 6 packets of salt a month is what he said. I think 5 to 6 packets of coffee is what I did, and Tata is a brand I use. And the other thing I want to tell was I know where these things are stored in my kitchen now. I did not know earlier.
Right.
So, and I had the same experience as you, except that I don't run a similar business like you. My business is global. My business is with aviation and travel companies. And in fact, my industry was the biggest impacted. But we did some innovative stuff. But before I get to the innovative stuff, and just like Ashwini asked about how did you, use technology, I would say there were 3 phases in this whole thing. First was, like everyone agrees, unpredictability, chaos. It was a blackout, like I said yesterday. And then we had a little bit of settling down. People were brought to work from home. You had, policies rolled out. You had all those portals. And you, like Ashish said, all these things were in the cupboard. Zoom, nobody knew even what the Zoom logo looked like on the iPhone or the computer. Oh, this is Zoom, wow. So we took out all these icons and started using them, started learning them. And then now we are settling down with this. This has become a kind of a new normal for all of us. So there were these 3 phases, which I think most of us face. As an organization, my role is to bring new customers. And there is a whole sales cycle. There's a lead generation cycle. There is a customer engagement cycle. And I don't want to go through all this. Everyone knows this as sales professionals. But I would like to go on a side tools. In my business, unless the customer sees the process, unless the customer sees a like-for-like process, unless the customer sees that we are bringing that automation on a particular process, he's not going to make me the custodian of his process. He's not going to select me. So we had to kind of mimic the whole physical site visit experience in a software. We had to show him a site, for example, Bulgaria, or is it Estonia, or is it China, or is it anywhere in India? We used to start with the entrance, show him where the people sit, and there are no people there. We had to mimic that, right? And show the software, show how it works. And that was a whole, we got 2 experience labs in London and San Francisco, and we mimicked the entire site tour. I'm sure many companies do that as well. So we use technology there at the fag end of the customer buying experience. What we also did was, if you notice, when a customer calls a call center, there is a process which happens at the back end. The call is recorded, like we're recording this call. There's a greeting that I do. Hey, thank you for calling, George, or thank you for calling Tata. You have a problem with the tea, and then we go on and finish the call. So this entire call is recorded, and some team leader analyzes call and says, does the greeting properly done? Has the price been properly given? Stuff like that. So this particular technology was also used for salespeople to monitor even salespeople to some extent. Some people are uncomfortable with that, right? So right. If I get on a sales call, have I greeted Ashwini properly? Have I actually talked about my company's USP? Have I Have I understood the customer's problem? Have I actually kept silent and understood what his issues are, challenges are, and then I've given the solutions of throwing a solution at the customer. So these are, and there are a lot of interaction technologies available. You've heard of Gong.io, which has become a multi-billion-dollar company. There are lots of companies out there, which we have also tried to leverage. So I'll just keep it brief that there was chaos. There was, people got it together, and now we're settling down. And I think technology has played a big role. All these things which are in the cupboard have come out, and now these are here to stay. But my opinion is these are hopefully not going to stay for long. I want to get back into the field.
Right, right. Everyone does believe that, George. Yes, Viplav.
Let me first give a background of what we do. So when I tell you what we do, it will be more interesting. Basically, into commercial vehicle sales at the lower end, large part of the transportation is daily essentials. And of course, anything that comes into your house is what we transport. That's the business we are in. And we have four stakeholders. There's, of course, we as a company. Then we have a channel partner, as Navneet was mentioning, we have channel partners who front end. We have a financial because it's a high ticket item. You can't buy it outrightly in cash. And we have the end customer. The interesting thing when the lockdown happened and we started with a mood of, opportunity and adversity, we realized that upskilling is required at all four ends. It's just upskilling at our end is not going to work. All four need to upskill to the best possible level. But we also knew that between us, our financials and channel partners on one side, our end consumer is typically, semi-literate, illiterate, and we cannot expect him to come at the same level as us. And hence, that consciousness helped us a lot. Some of our competitors, they upskilled themselves, but they refuse to, interact with the customer at his level. And that's where I think we edged out. And what I was explaining yesterday, typically, of course, Teams got introduced. Now it is a way of life. It has helped us to, prioritize a lot of our work. Nobody can just jump into our cabin or, ask for our time. Everybody knows what meeting they are attending at what point of time. So in that way, it has helped a lot. Our channel partners, we educated them for online booking because typically this customer brings in cash. So, it was so difficult in the morning and in the beginning of the lockdown, we had to pick up cash, put it in a sales executive account, then he will do an online transfer to the dealership because nobody can go to the dealership in the beginning. But we did start our business in the month of April itself. And a lot of digital was used in both reaching out to the end consumer. Now, since he was not very literate, we realized the only tool the end consumer was comfortable was with WhatsApp. He was not on Facebook. He was not on Twitter or Insta. But WhatsApp, he understood very well because this entire culture of seeing videos has become very common. So we created a lot of sales pitch videos, sales videos, how to pay the money to the dealer. We created videos to show that also.
Okay.
Because we realized he can't do it on his own. Right. And, so we went to the level of the customer. I think that's where we scored because this customer wanted to buy a competition brand, but they were not cooperating at his level. They were telling him, you reach out to us and, you can own our brand. And we went in a very different direction. We said, we'll reach out to you despite the pandemic. And I think we definitely benefited, in that way. The second thing we did, and it was very interesting, is we started analyzing all our data that was flowing in at the inquiry stage and lead stage. And there we realized we get patterns because we were also sitting in our houses in April. Till end of May, we were not allowed to come to office. So we started analyzing. We knew we were in essentials. So fruits, vegetables, that consumption started going up. People started approaching for those applications. But very interesting things which we know today happened at that time. Furniture's demand started going up because work from home called for a lot of furniture.
Right.
Cooking gas demand started going up because restaurants were closed. So your weekend orders started going down and your cooking at home went up. So cooking gas demand went up. So when we started looking at these patterns, we started utilizing this data to reach out to those kind of customers. We went to gas cylinder fellows. We went to furniture stores. We said, we'll get you a vehicle. They were worried how a vehicle will reach them. And when markets started opening, we went and took sanitized vehicles. Our people went with gloves and We used to carry the sanitizer, spray the whole vehicle, then ask them to trial out a vehicle because everybody was not comfortable taking a trial. So I think we use those kind of insights. And the most interesting insight, something we presented to management, is we became a job provider. Early on we realized people started reaching out to us, the educated class. And for the first time, we were seeing the educated class coming in such a huge quantity. And when we started analyzing some of the remarks that were put by our dealers, so for every inquiry you generate, you start putting a remark. What purpose? Why the emergency? And when we started reading, we started realizing people writing things like, I have, left my job in Bombay, moved to Trivandrum, or, I have lost my job, but I have a family, I have, few cattle at home now. I want to move cattle food. And we realized that we started providing jobs because our business was happening at that point of time. And, we started leveraging this and we did a lot of digital campaigns, earn a vehicle, buy a vehicle, earn 30,000 per month. We started doing this digitally and we started promoting it big time because we felt this was serving both purposes. One was the purpose of business. Second was actually to guide people who were getting into depression of having lost their jobs. So, in the first 4 months, so much of first-time buyers who were erstwhile working somewhere, a lot of migration happened to Uttar Pradesh from Maharashtra to Bihar. So there specifically we ran campaigns for migrant labor. Again, through the inquiries we generate, by calling them through the call center, we realized they had moved to their hometowns and their villages. We reached out to them, and I think there are a lot of data that we capture through our customer relationship module. The way we used it, I think we've never used it in the past. The kind of insights that we used in the last 15, 16 months. Of course, as I said yesterday, in a declining year, we showed record volumes, record profit, and a growth in market share. And I think it is a culmination of using all these tools that were available to us. So in that sense, opportunity in adversity, so many people made money during COVID. And I was reading Nykaa, the story of Nykaa, and I was reading how, despite being a niche fashion brand, they went into so many things that were used during COVID. And the way it is valued even before listing is only a testimony that when you look for opportunity in adversity, actually you do better than the rest. Because at the end of the day, we are also looking at ourselves relative to our competitors in a given.
Very well put, Viplav. So I'm sure the sales
hand is raised from a long time.
Yes, I know, Geeta. Please bear with me. So, since we have a good number of panel members here, so very well put, Viplav. So the sales teams are on the front lines, and they are also uniquely positioned to help companies understand what customers want, and and more so, you touched upon the competition piece. What the competition is also offering, so they have their eyes on them as well. Yes, Amit, Srividya, I can see the raised hands. Please feel free.
Yeah. So Srividya and I both are. Srividya is still Infosys. I'm ex-Infosys, so we can go that. So I think, see, one of the advantages I had was that I work in Sybase, which predominantly caters to the product engineering space. Right. So out of 50 customers that we have, more than 200 are perhaps some of the best technical product companies, which basically do the digital revolution in different industries. So the access was to organizations who understood the impact of digital evolution. It took some time, but obviously these are the companies which probably did the best over a period of time. So I look at it in three ways. So when we were hit, we also have travel and hospitality as a very large vertical, which fell by almost 14% in a month. But I looked at it in three different ways. One, obviously, when the entire process started, and then during the middle aspect of it, and then towards the phase which we are talking about now. Fundamentally, we believed that whatever is your strength is not going to change. Like if I'm good at serving the product engineering space, that's not going to change. I'm not suddenly going to start doing something 2 or 3 different things. It's not that easy to start doing in that space. So how can I communicate what I'm doing in a much better way? Because earlier, obviously, you used to walk into the customers and speak to them. We realize that if this entire situation continues for a long time, the demand for technology is just going to increase. So we
True.
took an early bet in the sense that instead of going on the back foot, so one of the key things that helped us is, so just to give you an idea, we never had any work from home policy prior to March. We might be perhaps the only company, everyone used to come to office, no work from home. But our entire infrastructure was tested for the 7,500 people to work from home. Because we didn't have, so we did not have an infrastructure which said that 20% or 30% could work from home. If any calamity had to happen, we said the 100% people would have to work from home. So the entire security infrastructure was prepped for that, because of which we could send everyone work from home in 1 or 2 days without a single instance of anything going wrong from a client perspective. So that became easy. We also took a step, which I mentioned yesterday as well, that our entire leadership worked from office. So the top 10 people have continuously worked from office, including our CEO, from day one in March 2020 till today. Not a single day of work from home. So we were there. So what we did was, while the entire organization worked from home, we collaborated in a way that how you can have what your strengths are communicated to your clients in a more proactive manner. And as someone said some time back, all the clients were available because now the meetings were on Teams and Zoom. So suddenly everyone was available to listen to you, because there was this feeling also, I'm not getting to travel, so I have to maximize my time where I can meet more and more people. So there was a lot of enthusiasm and interest in people coming together and speaking. Over a period of time, that enthusiasm went away because it became a norm. You see, the enthusiasm that I will take every possible meeting went away. So we had that very small window of 3 or 4 months where we could get every customer who probably had earlier said, I'm not interested in working with offshore, or I don't think I want to give anything away from my on-site team. We got their attention. And because we were all together, we could collaborate well. The second part, and we did a number of things, where, like we did online coffee meetings. I don't know how many of us did that, where we actually had a coffee hamper sent to a client's home. And then together we had lunch, or a lunch meal sent to a client's home, whether they're in Australia, US, or any other time zone that they were in. So some of those things we did. As 6 months passed, we realized now not all clients will come for all the meetings because that enthusiasm is gone. So it was more about as and when necessary. And today, when the entire world is trying to work in a hybrid zone, so see, from the realization that it's going to be a temporary thing to a realization that it may not be exactly similar, like everyone working from home, but hybrid is the future. The way you communicate your information is also changing over a period of time, and data insights work. So we have always been an organization which captures data. In fact, our tagline is delivering value scientifically. What scientifically means is there needs to be a predicted way of doing things, because everything, or possibly most of the things that happen have happened in the past, which means if you have recorded them, your ability to make decisions get better. So that's something that we as an organization did. Work on your strengths, but the ability to communicate your strengths has to be now more technologically driven.
Right. So I'm restraining my thoughts here. Yes, Srividya, please. Let's have it here from you all first.
Yeah, we identified the most critical challenges faced by the sales force and then developed a 7-point plan, which could act as guardrails for an entire process and technology transformation. As a company, we were, moving towards being a live enterprise much before the pandemic. So under the leadership of our chairman, we were looking to make our company very much like an enterprise or a living organism, which senses, processes, and responds in real time. So towards that, some of the key things that we were aiming for was about getting agility and speed, responsiveness, bringing a network effect, simplifying, modernizing, automating, and improving the velocity of ideas. What the pandemic did was actually accelerate our journey. So about 4 decades of global delivery model, pioneering that, and then we have about 144 different nationalities working from 46 different countries. So when people are in that distributed mode, how do you actually get data and insights to them? So main thing is to see how our clients actually buy. So we did a virtual buyer map of how the clients are buying. What are some of the offerings that will be most useful and relevant to them? Because our clients also are looking to optimize cost. So is there a way in which we can put money back to them through our initiatives? And for the sales team, I think quite a few initiatives were taken for. One was like, how do you find the connections? Like, how do you use technology to say which are the stakeholders? What are the different challenges that are faced by them? Who's connected to whom? And understanding what could be that thing which you can pitch. What is a buyer intent? What could be some of the signals that we can pick up from the social media and networks? All this delivered through Infimi is the name of the app that we have. So all our sales teams actually get some nudges on this, using which they could actually act on it. And from an equipping them as well, I think the storytelling became a very important part of this whole thing. So earlier, you could walk down the corridors, you can meet them for lunch, etc. But when you have to narrate in front of a virtual setting, people require completely different skills, right? So we actually have made arrangements for people to practice their pitches. How do you actually use data? How do you actually sell and engage with people on social networks? So that is something that our sales head actually has done a lot in terms of being a brand. How do you actually engage thought leadership on the networks? Because you don't have those mice kind of forums anymore, right? So bringing the entire life cycle from the deal origination to deal closure on using our internal tools to a completely digital first, mobile first kind of mode, and using the data insights from our CRM to actually, bring a virtuous cycle. So we have a very good knowledge portal. So from the new offerings that are launched by engineering teams to the new sellers who need to pick up this, know about what the offerings are, what are the USPs, and being able to pitch it to the clients. We kind of train them, and all the knowledge sharing is very vital to bring this all together. And last but not the least, I think we set up a response team, so that across these continents, wherever people have any kind of issue, they reach out to us at any 24/7. There is an immediate resolution, be it someone's child, maybe a dependent visa expiring, to someone's phone not being there, or a laptop issue. So and the entire 98% of the workforce went into production immediately. And as you know, some of these have resulted in us winning some of the largest deals in the industry and for the company.
Right. Points well taken. Geeta, let's have you. I'm really sorry to keep you waiting for long. We'll have Alpana then. And also, we have heard the challenges. There have been some fundamental shifts that have happened. There has been good usage of data analytics that has gone. How is Microsoft powering the sales organization within enterprises to help the workforce to be more productive, get the right insights in their day-to-day operations, and enable better sales? And also, if you want to highlight or answer some of the points that were raised earlier, Geeta, please.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Alpana, I'm just coming in here first and then please go ahead. Transition to you. I think, see, as I was calling out, and it was my delight when I was talking to many customers, and now also hearing that with agility with which every customer pivoted and changed their selling process. And I think I will just call this in my word like a digital selling, right? That how do you enable your workforce to do that digital selling? Now, there are many advantages also, right? Which is all of the LinkedIn part of the world and the communities which got built on this entire digital platforms, which made life easier. But I'll not touch too much onto that part because I know there are all sales gurus who are sitting here who know how to do the selling part of it. I think I want to touch a little bit on the tooling part of it, that how we are going ahead and helping customers to do that. So I think a couple of things which I am seeing at least across the board happening is an adoption. So first thing, I think the Teams, the platform which we just spoke about, I think I've seen many people using this, and forget about anybody else. We ourselves at Microsoft, we actually created an entire bot, what we call My Assist bot. Okay. Which was like the top queries, which if the sellers had about the selling process, about, let's say, legal queries, if they're going and selling anything around incentives, the process part of it. So we actually plugged in that bot kind of an feature in the Teams so that the seller, now that he doesn't have a corridor chats, or he can just can't walk up to the legal guy and ask for something, he has one place to go and ask all of those questions. So how do you simplify that interaction process for the sales team is where I saw a lot of people building small application in the Teams platform so that people can just leverage this platform for doing the work better. Right. And many teams actually went ahead and did the entire workforce scheduling on this, which is the Fleet on Street sales team, which goes, how do they go? How do they meet customers? So how do you use this platform to do complete shift scheduling, all of that part? So that's a one part of the thing which was done here. The second part, which is a little bit internal, but maybe fascinating for leaders here, where I saw that a lot of workplace analytics being used by leaders. And it is not about really vigilance part. It is more for empowerment because people are feeling burnt out. As Navneel was saying, if you are 8 to 8 on the calls, like where is the time? There is no time which is left, right? So we were actually empowering leaders saying that just see and check that your team, are they largely collaborating within the team or they are also going outside of the team, which means are they talking to marketing enough? Are they talking to product team enough or no, right? So those kind of an insights, which was one part of saying that how well team is collaborating within team and outside the team. Right, that's a very intelligent use of technology which we saw people were doing in terms of how it happened. The second probably sales leader here, you can also figure out that how much time on an average your teams are spending with the internal meetings versus the external meetings, right? What kind of meetings which are happening, because this is an important parameter for all you sales leaders, that how much time people are really spending on the field, and it's available as an analytics part of it, right? So that's the second thing which we saw, that how people were wanting to adopt from a sales and productivity standpoint. The third, I think it happened because all of you said that now the access to customer became easier, right? We don't have to really travel and plan and all of that part. I think we saw a good use, and that too even internal at Microsoft, that how do you use marketing to do a very big lead generation for you, which is like doing that whole digital lead generation for you. Those records come to you saying that, okay, these many customers are really interested, and then how teams take that initiative. And as part of Microsoft, I think from a selling perspective, not teams alone, but the AI part of the world, we've actually created daily recommender for our sellers. And that's a true story, which we have done, that there are daily recommender for our sellers, which tells them that what's the next conversation you should go and have with the customer if customer is already sitting on the base. So that's the level
More of
of
predictive.
AI.
Yeah.
More of predictive and prescriptive, more of prescriptive, saying that you go and talk and do this conversation with your customer. So I think these were some variety of use cases which I saw, at least from a technology standpoint, which were adopted by the teams. I'm not covering the usual features of the teams, which is like how we sort of saw some uptake happening in terms of people going on the video calls, doing collaboration with the customer, 1:many webinars. Those were like very usual ones. But I think from a seller perspective, these were few, I think, use cases, which at least I saw that how customers were using. I'll just summarize. One, the use of platform for process automation is the first thing which I saw happening a lot. Second, using this whole digital communities to really leverage, and what should I say, like say borderless customer conversations which you can have, right? That is something which we saw happening. And of course, AI usage very, very heavily in building those prescriptive model for sellers. And interestingly, I'll just end with one thing. Other day I was in conversation with my boss. He said, now just think about if a customer is not talking to you, right? He's somewhere connected to you on the digital platform. So either they are looking for you or your competition on LinkedIn, Instagram, or wherever, but they are in that connected world where they're constantly searching for the information if they need something. So if they're not talking to you, they're talking to the digital world or your compete, right? So we have to just be careful that now customers do see digital platform as a first place to go and do their research about the products or the buying, whatever they want to do. So an effective use of those digital platforms is very, very critical in the whole buying in the selling process. Sorry, it was a little long answer.
No, I completely agree with you, Geeta. So while the opportunity is significant, so is the pressure to capitalize on it. So no, let's put it that way in that scenario. Yes, Alpna.
No, sure, absolutely. I was just thinking about, all the different stories that we've been hearing through this call, right? And as you rightly said, as there is a challenge, there's also opportunity and there's a pressure to capitalize. And I think that's really the golden statement. In fact, in the early parts of the pandemic, when we were looking at, this whole thing being temporary, and then after that, organizations started seeing that this experiment is working well, and maybe there are lessons to be learned to be able to sort of become more profitable going forward. That's when when we were doing this whole study with a variety of organizations, we saw that there was an opportunity of improving costs by almost 13 to 16% if we were to move organizations to a hybrid model of working. And very specifically to the sales organization, what we saw is that there was a really high, as we call it, remote working propensity, which was available in the sales department, wherein a lot could be done very effectively virtually using digital tools. But, I also wanted to share that there are at least 5 to 6 very critical parameters that I have seen when we have worked with multiple organizations, which impact the level of adoption of this remote working and digital that I have seen in organizations. The first and foremost, I think, was the type of accounts. Are you dealing with small accounts? Are you dealing with large accounts? And accordingly, if there are a lot of small accounts which involve personal interaction, is that more amicable to working remotely versus very large accounts where you already have established relationship? So the size of the account was one factor that I saw many organizations using as a consideration. The second was the profile of the customer. And we heard from our panel members, how the variation in the profile of customers that they were serving made a very big difference whether they were able to get on to digital and hybrid seamlessly versus if they had to really, sort of rethink their strategy around getting back to office. The third one was around the type of activity, right? Where there was relationship building activity, which is new customer acquisition. People usually felt that, there was a higher dependence on face-to-face for the first time relationship building versus if it was more about managing and, sort of working on an existing relationship, people were able to get onto digital very easily because, you knew each other and you just had to transfer the mode of interaction. But we still hear a lot of customers saying that the first few connects are much more impactful when they are, face to face, because you can read the non-verbal cues and do all those nice informal things, which doesn't happen in a digital channel. The next one was around the infrastructure and digital tools. So organizations that were already looking at becoming more digital, more efficient, and moving to new ways of working, they found it a lot easier. Certain organizations were caught by surprise, but they were able to sort of move into it quickly. The other piece is around the culture. So we also saw that in organizations, the very same organization operating in 20 different countries had a very different strategy around use of digital and working hybrid, depending on the cultural fabric of that country. And that impacted significantly the sales process, wherein, you may not be very amicable to being able to work digital. So these, 5, 6 things we thought were really making a huge variation, wherein some organizations were able to, in their sales department, get on to a 70-80% propensity to continue working in a hybrid fashion, whereas in certain other cases, it was just about, say, 30 to 40%. So, that sort of was one point I wanted to make. The other piece I wanted to specially call out is the fact that while we talked about all these nice things, that there was talent fungibility, everybody could attain, could attend any meeting in any town, any city with any customer, and all that created a lot of business impact. But one challenge that I want to put up front is that most organizations said that they were really going crazy trying to figure out how to induct new hires into their organizational process in a virtual world. And that is where I saw a lot of innovation happening, wherein new people in the sales function, organizations really tried to do a lot in terms of digital training, knowledge management portals, videos, customer interaction things, looking at repeatable, personalized training content, etc., to be able to get them effective on the ground, because that was one part of the puzzle which organizations took the longest to be able to figure out. So just thought, I'll share a little bit more of a wider perspective from the variety of clients that we served in this space and saw them behaving very differently based on some of these factors.
Very interesting insights, Alpna, and I'm sure anybody who wants to pitch in, because Geeta touched upon how organizations should look at the remote Salesforce engaged and keep, make them more productive, use of right IT solutions to increase productivity, cross interaction with business teams and stuff, and the insights shared by Alpna. Any thoughts quickly?
Yeah.
So I guess we'll keep the
Yeah,
answers very short from now on.
Point
Yeah.
to add. See about the research that Geeta spoke about. Right? So independently, people are researching, right? So if you see the B2B buyers, when they're considering any purchase, about 17% of their time, they're doing meeting with the potential suppliers. Okay. But the time that they spend with any one sales rep, maybe just about 5 to 6% of the total. So you are having, these clients who are independently trying out, finding problems that they have to solve, finding out, researching about the suppliers. And the best way we can help them is to make sense of various things that they themselves are experiencing from multiple sources. They are also, like, Kalpana mentioned, on the social media, on various platforms that they are getting signals. So they are also confused as to who to buy from. So if we are able to make sense for them, then, it solves their problem. And also we have actually helped them in some way. So that is one. And last but not the least, I think from an employee burnout, employee wellness perspective, I think it's very important. And, we've taken good care in terms of seeing how people are. Do they have any kind of issues? Are there any kind of health related aspects? So we did a lot of programs on health, whether it is physical health or mental health. We had a lot of virtual events like yoga days. Then we had fitness days. And it was a very participative kind of thing. So I just wanted to add that into the entire mix.
Right. Yes, Navleen.
Yeah, so just a couple of perspectives on the digital piece. See, the way I see digital today is, it's not a nice to have, and it's not something which is fancy that you talk about. Digital is the DNA today, and any business which is not having a digital insight or a digital approach built into its way of functioning, is really not going to be successful. And it was more very clearly shown during the pandemic. And just to give you some examples, for us, as I said earlier, we were doing a merger of companies, and we actually put in about 1,500 new distributors and about 3,000 rural distributors. And we realized that if we have to really succeed in this difficult time, we have to digitize 100% of our distributors. So we actually undertook a program where we implemented distributor management systems and SFAs in 100% of our digital network. And today, after this 2 years, we can actually get to know what bill is getting cut in a village in Uttar Pradesh and what is it that is being bought real time. So that is the kind of information which is flowing in today. And we are using this advanced real time data for a lot of insight driven activities. So for instance, one of the big changes which is happening in the FMCG space in the market, and for us, we don't have the luxury of digitally talking to customers. We have to be out there. We have to visit the outlet. The retailer is not going to speak to you digitally. Yeah. So you have to go there, stand in front of his shop, wait for his customers to go away and then take his order, period. Right. So my teams are out and we've been in the market for a while now. The second wave, we again got cooped up a little bit at home, but then now we are back in the market. So I think what we realized is that the predictable demand pattern of retailers is completely going away. So earlier retailer expectation was, oh, I place an order every week, company will come and deliver to me. But today, the issue is the retailer wants something overnight. So because he has a certain demand, he wants something overnight. So does my data-driven analytics engine is able to, in certain ways, predict that this is the pattern of demand which is coming from a certain sector of the market, and can I address that? So my salesman or my telecalling network needs to focus on that part of the market rather than uniformly doing it across. The other area which we worked on with respect to data and analytics is, we rolled out this entire top outlet premium grocery program across the country to 20,000 retailers across the country. And for the first time, we actually conducted completely digital KYC, and we developed a program which is the first in the FMCG industry where everything is digital. So KYC is digital, payouts to the outlets are digital, audit done in the outlets on merchandising is digital. And what we found is that initially there was a doubt in our minds that would these retailers come on board and accept something like this. We found that the adoption is remarkably good. The only thing that matters is that you should have a digital solution which solves this problem. If you have a digital solution which you think is very nice, it's not going to matter. It has to solve his problem. It has to make sense to him as far as his business is concerned. So that is the other area we used. And finally, I wanted to quickly touch upon this aspect that some of you were speaking about on employees. So we actually recruited last year about 250 frontline sales force. And possibly in the FMCG industry, we were among the few companies, because we are expanding, who got in so many people. So we had a very unique challenge. How do we induct 250 people into our business digitally? And we actually developed that entire thing online. And we found that it was a bit of a challenge in the beginning, but then we inducted them online. We did their evaluations online. And ultimately, we could get them on board. And today they are successfully working. The only other perspective I want to leave is that, while we all talk about the advantages of Teams and Zoom and all other platforms, and, there is so much which can be done through digital interface, nothing can take away the need to have a personal conversation. And that is our learning. So very clearly, hybrid is at least in our minds, we are very clear that if there's a meaningful conversation to be had, you need to sit across the table, reach out to the guy. You can digitally engage with him whenever you want, but the conversation also needs to happen, on the table in person.
Right.
That's going to be absolutely critical, if we want to really sustain and move things forward. But then digital is embedded into our DNA and the way we do business, and we see that as a key enabler, during this crisis.
Navneel, I just have to make one quick statement, Ashwini.
Yes.
We always talk about this at EY, saying that, all of this transformation has to have humans at the center. So we talk about humans at the center, innovation at speed, and technology at scale. So it's the combination of these three. So while the digital and the technology piece is extremely essential, innovation at scale is extremely essential, but it has to have humans at the center. And what we are really trying to do, I think, in a nutshell, using data and technology, is to make sure that the personalization of experience and human interaction can be really high quality, and everything else in terms of the heavy lifting and the inciting and the intelligence can come through data. And now we're building so much beautiful data because of this adoption. So I think it's really a good time to get intelligent about this.
So
right.
If I may add quickly, all said and done.
Ashish, I'll come to you next.
I tend to agree with Navneel completely. First thing I want to say, I'm just trying to fill in some gaps here. We had no choice. We had no choice to go and work from home. There was no hybrid option, nothing. So we had
to forced. So that's given.
That's given. Second, I think I missed saying it was a level playing. So whatever we faced, the customer also faced. And now whatever we discussed, was it really effective? And I like to just tell you quickly, we had three types of leads, like Srividya talked about the whole technology with Infosys, and we had similar stuff. We had people whom we were in conversation with before the pandemic, and that sales cycle was going on. We had new logos, sales cycle was going on. We had existing customers, sales cycle was going on. And how did they pan out? We signed all of them. We didn't lose a deal per se. We lost because the industry collapsed. Like we said, 14% dip. That's the point I like to make. So it's not that things like Amit said exactly. It's not that our product was lost or our centers were lost. We also operate in 21 countries, 85 locations, 50,000 people, all of them alive and well and kicking. We just had a virus floating around, and we had to wear a mask and observe the new normal. And we had to pray for this beautiful vaccine to come out and I'm talking month of March. So we had, again, no choice, but we invented like a sinking man clutches for a straw. We adopted the model of work from home. But later on, like Navneel said, we figured out when we went to hybrid, look, that guy will only buy when you speak to him. Kitna chai chahiye, kitna coffee chahiye, kitna salt chahiye. वो लेगा नहीं, you won't take it. That's what I like.
Right. Very well put. Yes, Ashish.
Yeah, hi. Thanks, Ashwini. So a couple of things I think just want to add to what Alpna said and Navneel said. Very interesting points, because I think people being the center, both internally as well externally, becomes very important, and that's where I think what we saw was that one is about taking care of our own people, and then whatever solutions you design are applicable for your own organization as well. But when you are engaging with the customers also, the people centricity becomes very crucial. So one of the things which we experienced in addition to this was about very significant change in the customer's buying behavior. Now the customer was not willing to spend too much of time trying to do lots of evaluations. Basically, they are looking at how do we come out, how do they identify a solution quickly and then deploy that as soon as possible, because they wanted to get over, and they had multiple of these initiatives which were coming on their plate, and these initiatives have been they've been pushed across for last 18 months. Multiple of these, like what Navneel said, on the sales and distribution side, in terms of implementing the digitization of the distributors, the Salesforce automation, and so on and so forth. There are multiple of these things which is happening. So their customers started taking decisions very, very fast, basically. So it's either fail fast or accept fast or reject fast, basically. So that was one more trend. And third, what we also saw was that CFO suddenly became kind of a very powerful what you call decision maker. Usually in the technology selection process, they would not normally come up so early, basically. But now the CFO was starting to play a very important role quite early in the sales cycle as well, basically. So that's where, because allocation of the budgets for multiple initiatives and because of limited kind of funding options, you would see that the CFO would decide the priority, that which one would really help solve the pain faster, and two, which one would help them really get the ROI faster, basically. So these are three things which I thought I will add to it, basically.
Right, points well taken. Amit, anything that you want to add?
Yeah, I think most of it is being covered, but there's something which is paramount, which was always there, is that, see, the role of technology and digitization is for optimization and efficiency, right? At the end of the day, what you want to do is you want to make sure that you're doing things better and that the outcome is faster. And that's why the hybrid model going forward will be more effective, because whichever can be done remote, you don't have to spend time, you don't have to waste energies in doing that. So where technology will play a very fulfilling role in providing an end-to-end means, whether it's delivery, whether it's operations, or whether it's sales, it will come together and do it. But nothing can take away that personal interaction, which is beyond that digitization. So earlier, the former part also was done in a very inefficient manner. And while people had the choice of technology at that time as well, they were not forced into a situation to adopt it. And today, after being forced into it, you are able to understand that where technology plays a role and where a human interaction plays a role. So that intelligence is going to become so potent in actually driving things in a much more impactful manner, is something that all of us will see, which is wonderful, because it will create better economies, more jobs. Everything from that perspective will get impactful, and a greener and better environment as well, with less travel and few other things.
I just wanted to add, Ashwini.
Yes, Geet. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, Srividya.
Yeah. As we return to work, what we realize is, vaccine management, handling healthcare, the physical infrastructure, having sensors, the spacing, and having workspaces which are more attuned to hybrid ways of working. These are all some things that we experienced ourselves, and now we have an offering for our clients to return to work, right? Return to office. And also, like what Amit mentioned, deciding which are the factors which enable you to decide which project should be done virtually, which project can be done in a hybrid way. So we kind of run through our own set of 20,000 odd projects and arrived at a way in which you can actually decide that. So this is also something that we are offering to our clients, to be able to decide and be successful when they work out of a hybrid mode. So I thought I wanted to share that.
That's so hybrid is the way to go, at least for the near future, and as things open up, and I'm sure they will, when we have more in-person interactions. I guess we are over short time, but final quick comments that you want to have.
It may be,
Please keep it short.
It may not be fair if we don't talk about the future. I think the return to a full model of the future, my prediction, if I may put my neck on the line, is also not going to be easy. Because as we say, we can fly to London, San Francisco, Singapore, whatever. There's a vaccine war out there. Are you Pfizer or are you COVID Shield? Oh, sorry, you can't come. Go to a third country to come to my country. So the return to normalcy is not going to be that open and shut case. That's my prediction. It's going to be really, really tough for people to accept nationalities, visas, conditions. And there's a huge topic. I just want to say the future is not going to be very easy to go back. So we have to continue with this technology, which is very useful, but we have to live with that also if we don't like it.
Right.
Yeah. So two quick points. I think one, adding to the initial conversation, I think forecasting has taken prominence in the last 16, 17 months. While Ashish ji spoke about project-based forecasting, where CFO is playing a role. I think routine business forecasting, just to share with you, we were at about 84, 85% accuracy on forecasting at one point of time, 4 or 5 years back. Now we are almost 95, 96%, where the digital tools are playing a role. We are going up to hot leads. Customer is not even given a booking, but we are able to predict whether he'll be able to give a booking, and that is the vehicle that needs to reach to our channel partner. And we are from about 21 days of inventory at dealer and 15 days at plant. We are operating dealer at 15 days, ourselves operating at 7 days. That too only at month end. During the month, it is just 1 day, 2 day inventory. That's coming out of good forecasting accuracy. Of course, there is pressure and digital tools, being used. That I think is a significant change I am seeing in our business. Second is, I will agree with everybody, what the future holds for us is not very sure. Hybrid will be there, but hybrid could be, 99% work from home, 1% go out, or 99% go out, 1% work from home. It will depend on the industry, the company, and also the guts of the leaders of that company. It's also a call of guts. Many people have not stepped out of their home despite their business requiring it. Fair to them. No, nothing to worry. But a lot of people have shown guts to actually conduct business by stepping out. And I can assure you they have benefited. All companies that have done relatively well to the others in an industry, if you analyze, you will realize whether it was using digital tools or showing guts in business, you will find a combination of both when they have succeeded in this COVID period.
Right, Biplab. Yes.
Ashwini, if I was to just give my one-liner, I think in the future, it's going to be all about balance, right? So on one hand, while we are saying that work will become more efficient, we will become more productive, customers will become more accessible, all that is great. But on the other hand, we also have to make sure that we are using data intelligently to make sure that there is well-being and burnout and all those matters also getting taken care of. And some of these, we are just about seeing the beginning of this issue of mental health and well-being and burnout. So it's very important that as we get into this journey of data and analytics, we are using it for both purposes, not just for the purpose of doing better in business, but also making sure that we are doing it in a sustainable manner for humans, that is employees, ourselves, our customers, everybody. So I think that balance is going to be the right, important thing to look at.
I'm sure. Yes, digital exhaustion is real. So I will not dispute on that front. So there is a need to humanize the virtual collaboration. So that's very essential. Yes, please, anyone.
So I think I'll just make my last this thing because from an hybrid perspective, I think we are also calling that this is going to be hybrid paradox, which means people want to meet but want a flexible timing, right? That's something which is going to stay, that it will stay as a hybrid paradox part of it. I think 3 things which we are focusing as a company and what we are seeing customers really coming to us. that every hybrid will have an element of people, what Alpna just called out. It will have an element of places, that where and how people are working. And third, it will have an element of process, right? So three P's. But I think every company and every probably company on this call also will have a very different blueprint for themselves for all these three elements, that how do they want to deal with their people, their well-beings, their productivity, all of that part. How will they manage the places of satellite offices or corporate offices and people continue to work from home? How the work will get distributed more and more among that. And from a process standpoint, I think there is a major need, which at least I hear as I go from the large organization, from corporate to their, let's say, branch offices or the smaller offices, saying that the digital needs to reach to the branch offices also. It should not stay at corporate. So how are we thinking about, since we have an advantage of digital, how do we make all the business processes more optimized, digitized? I think that's the third element I would say, at least from a hybrid standpoint, would continue. So right now we are at least sticking to this framework of people, places, and process.
Processes. Yes, Amit, final thoughts before I summarize this conversation.
No, I think
I think Ashish is also speaking. Are you on mute, Ashish?
Okay.
Mute. Sorry.
No, Amit, you go ahead, please.
Yeah.
No. I think you're great. Well, okay, fine. I'll just, instead of back and forth. So the final thoughts, I echo with everyone's sentiment that it's a combination. It's going to be a combination of what the industry demands and how the people's sentiments are. I personally do believe that the industry we are in, IT industry, lot of work can happen from home, but the culture cannot happen from home, which means it will become immaterial which organization you are working for, because when we talk about engagement activities which are done offline, every organization is doing that. You are on a level playing field. There's no difference between. So once you are an organization of some substance, you are doing that kind of activities at any point of time. But the culture can only be inculcated when the people are in office, when you're having lunch together, when you are spending 5 minutes before a meeting, after a meeting. So the culture element cannot be taken by any tool, by any process, which means if that hybrid model is not there, it will become immaterial which organization you work for, which is a very, very scary thing in that sense. I mean, that's why the kind of attrition we are seeing today is happening. If the industry grows at 12% and the biggest of companies are reporting attrition of 25 and 30%, then where are the remaining 14% going? So, right. So that's a culture completely being diluted, which is where you don't feel connected with the company. If you're not connected with the company, why do you want to stay? The only driving factor becomes money. So that's why the hybrid model needs to have a very strong prominence. It cannot be a choice. If it becomes a choice, then it's going to be a big issue from an employee standpoint. Even the employee's mental well-being, it cannot be achieved by complete working from home, at least in India, where we know, unlike the Western countries, it's much more easier to work from home. Our houses are smaller, joint families. It's how many times we get on calls and there's so much of noise out around it. So it is not going to be a long-term thing. It has to find its own way into a hybrid model.
Yes, Ashish.
Yeah. So just a quick one from my side that what I see, if I'm sure all of us have tried to go out on some breaks and so on and so forth. If you just go outside into slightly more rural areas, you will find people are actually moving out. All of us are desperate to go out. So that human element of wanting to mix, wanting to interact with people to people and so on and so forth is always going to be there. Basic. That will never go away. What's quite likely possible is that there are going to be multiple of these waves which will keep on coming in. So you will have this on and off kind of a mode in the more urban areas, basically. But if you look at more downstream rural areas, you will find more interactivity and people are actually coming out because for them, going out is doing and working for a living, basically. And that's where the demand or consumer demand and all the infrastructure demand and all the other type of demand is really going to really keep on building up, basically. So from that perspective, I think while we all in the urban side of the country would think about hybrid model and so on and so forth, but if you look at more from a broader perspective, there is a strong desire to go out, start doing work, start getting on the field, like we all sales guys also want to go on the field and meet customers face to face. So that urge is always going to be there, and that wave of going out is going to come out again and again. That's one thing which is going to definitely happen. And I'm sure Navneel will maybe endorse, or maybe Viplav will endorse, that they are very much serving those kind of markets where people are actually coming out. Basically, they are now actually physically interacting a lot, even though all the precautions are being taken. So I think that trend will kind of slowly subside, and maybe it may take 3 to 4 years time for things to really cool down and change over. But then that desire will always be there to start going out for everybody.
Right. Thank you so much. It was really insightful to have so many different views with stories, and a lot of new learnings for most of us, I'm sure. I think we'll wind up this session. I'll quickly summarize from whatever the insights that I could gather from this conversation. One, the shift to digital and remote engagement has been embraced across, so all the participants have unanimously agreed to this. Sales leaders like yourselves have moved from being forced to adopt digital in reaction to the crisis in the early stages, to a growing conviction that digital is the way to go, with most of you, agreeing that things will take time to open up. We have also seen use of technologies like analytics and AI that has been used to leverage sales, discover and meet new customers, improves the sale experience, and finally, trying to make most of the physical and virtual world to some extent, if possible. It was a pleasure having this conversation with each one of you. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
When are we meeting next?
Yes, I saw your message, George. I said I leave that to the team here. So 3 months down the line, I guess it's a good time to converge and again reflect on what we spoke about today.
Absolutely.
Sure.
Indeed.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
And good wishes to everybody.
Bye-bye.
Please. Bye-bye.
Bye,
Thank
everyone.
you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.